with Martin go live in a few minutes.
Nikolai, maybe let's change the order, so because we can have a backup, but not now. It's something like 10-15 minutes.
Okay. Let's start live now, and of course, dear friends, I think we can start our session, which is devoted to the topic of the peculiarities of the venture industry in different regions of the world. Thank you very much for participation today in St. Petersburg Forum of Entrepreneurship, and the working language of the international part of the conference is English. That's why I hope Ekaterina Bazarova will help with the translation for speakers during the session. And let's talk about we see problems in Europe, Russia, and Asia markets. It is possible that one of few of our speakers will talk about the United States features, what is the industries missing, and how can this be fixed, and who are responsible for these decisions. Of course, it is too important to take at least helicopter view on the thesis that we're developing and how to provide cross-border exchange of startups and create international investment communities. Let me introduce our speakers. Ameya Prabhu is the founder and managing director of NAFA Capital Advisors and a partner in UAP Advisors. Ameya has been designated as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum. He's speaker from India. Christophe Schwoertzig, founder and managing director of Value Creation Alternative. From the company from England and Wales, United Kingdom. Christophe has more than 20 years of work experience in M&A deals, fundraising, strategy and IT consulting, and corporate finance. Mario Buttigieg, CEO of Fiduscorp from Malta. He has occupied a number of senior executive directorship positions in the financial services and corporate business in Malta. Vladislav Kochetkov has extensive experience in marketing, venture capital, and has been heading FINAM Corporation as president chairman of the management board for more than 10 years. And of course, my partner, Andrei Misiura. He's working with Asia for more than 10 years. He's an ex-diplomat and orientalist. At the moment, he heads the international direction of the HIC Capital Group, the managing partner. And also, he is the head of Eurasian office of MSME CCI. It's the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of India in the Eurasian region. I think we can start, and let's start from Christophe and Mario. And Mario to start.
Hey Nikolai, maybe I can take over from this point.
Yeah.
So first of all, good afternoon, and for those following us in different times, good morning as well. So it has been a very interesting H1 in 2021, and in fact, when we look at the venture capital world, Americas, Europe, Asia have attracted mega funding. There were big rounds, and in fact, during the first half of 2021, it surpassed the whole 2020 when you consider the number and as well the value of the venture capital rounds. Looking at Europe, the European startup captured 20% of the global capital, and this was mainly focused on the late stage venture capital. The main investors, as we can anticipate in Europe, were Germany, UK, and France, and 66% of those investments were captured from investors within their same country. So the investors seem to prefer those projects which are closer to shore. even if we look at the unicorns during the first half of this 2021 have increased materially. And again, looking at the European side, currently there are 109 unicorns, of which 37 were increased during 2021, the first half. The main projects, particularly when we look that we are passing through the COVID times, were technology and everything which is related to technology. Obviously, during the COVID as well, there were a number of biotech projects which were doing quite well. And the expectation for the coming months or possibly years as well is that the technology, financial services led by technology initiatives, biotech and similar projects will be those projects, startups, etc., which will attract most of the investors' money. This is happening in Europe, this is happening in the US, it's happening in Asia, it's happening in all the world. So finger crossed that the venture capital business will continue as good as it started during this 2021. Christophe, shall I pass to you maybe to explain a little bit more on what's happening, particularly the challenges, and how we can overcome those challenges as well?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mario, for this overview of the European and US markets. And I want to thank the HIC Capital Group for this opportunity to speak on this video conference. So for those who don't understand much or don't know much about the market here in Europe, first, we have Brexit with the UK, and then there is the rest of Europe, continental Europe. And it is that there is a difference in the mindset of people and in the mindset of businesses, which is extremely relevant, especially for venture capitals and startups. The UK, they have this Anglo-Saxon mindset, and they're very aggressive. They are more privately focused, whereas on the continent, the mindset is more looking towards public subsidies, government aids, government funding, and also the countries are heavily segmented and fragmented with different languages, and even within each country you have different regions with different jurisdictions and different laws and local objectives. The consequence of this fragmentation makes doing business in Europe extremely complicated when you want to grow your startup. On the good side, if you want to start a startup, so seed investments, it is very easy because you will get subsidies from your town, subsidies from your region, subsidies from the government, subsidies from Europe, and then you have public-private partnerships. Like in France, you'll have the French Tech that is also going to subsidize, projects across different countries. You would have alliances between the industry and some local governments, like in Spain, where they're trying to foster the creation of new industries. And the reason why they do this is because on the continent, governments are seeing the subsidizing startups as an alternative to fight against unemployment, because we have very high unemployment and we have social securities, meaning that people unemployed are on the dole and they receive government aids. So the idea is to say, okay, instead of paying people for doing nothing, let's just subsidize the creation of new startups, and we will have those unemployed people actually doing something maybe more productive, and hopefully, they will manage, to survive the debt valley. And this is the major issue that we have. This is the debt valley. So it is easy to raise between 50,000 euros, maybe up to 1 or 2 million on continental Europe. But if you want to start, growing your business more aggressively and raise, 10 million plus, you have no choice but to go to the UK or to go to the US, right? Because there is no funding here in Europe. One of the reasons why there's no money for those companies willing, to grow more aggressively is because growing aggressively in Europe is extremely expensive, because you have to think globally, but you still have to act locally. So you'll have whatever application or service or product that you have, you will have to translate it. You will have to bear in mind, the local regulation. And each of those countries are actually, each of those regions are actually fighting against each other to attract talents and to bring the companies to themselves. So what is positive on the early stage becomes a break on the later stages, right? So having said that, what we need to think is, what is it what we would need to actually fix these issues. So I was thinking that the three dimensions that we can talk about. I mean, the first one is data. The second one is automated tools, and the third one is regulation. So on the data, if you look at what happens in the US, because the US is really the leading country for startups, with Silicon Valley, you have lots of organizations that are going to provide you tons of data on the businesses. And if you have data, then you can first identify who the investors are, but on the other side of the same coin, the investors can also identify the startups where they need to invest in. We have a real scarcity of data in Europe. So we may have some data when the company is listed, but when the company is private, there's more scarcity of information. And when a company is even smaller, when it's a startup, then basically there is no data. Right? We don't have databases like Crunchbase. We don't have databases like PitchBook. What we've done in our organization is that we started, looking at deals, M&A deals, and we've analyzed 8,000 M&A deals to try to understand how companies were valued, in the private equity world, where there's no information. And we have to go really deep into the information which is publicly available, like the media or the newspapers, because you don't really have information readily available. Even in some countries, in Spain, you don't have a register where you can go and look at the information. All the information is outdated. So one of the things that is really key is to build, these databases of information. The second thing is automation. This is not only for Europe. I think that this works for across the globe. A lot of these challenges that you have when you're raising money or when you're looking to invest is actually to match your investment criteria with the project's criteria. And especially if you're looking at early stage ventures, the devil is in the details, right? Because we all operate into a sector, but at the end of the day, what really makes a startup successful versus another one is going to be this little angle or this little spark or genius idea that makes it different, right? So, in order to identify, the future unicorn, you probably have to go through a very long list of potential candidates, and you need to select the ones that will not only be good as a business model, but will also be good for you as an investor, and vice versa. So the startup needs to identify the investor that is really going to be a good fit with the company. If the investor has got in his mind a different path or a different strategy than the entrepreneur, it's just not going to work, right? So in order to match the offer with the demand, it would be good to have automated tools and use, machine learning and artificial intelligence. In the US, companies like IBM are spending a lot of money, building these kind of tools, but they're not quite there yet. And here in Europe, we're going to face, it's a double whammy, because for this machine learning and artificial intelligence tools to work, you need to have data, and good data. And in Europe, if you go back to our first point, we don't have good data. And so even if we had the technology in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence, we would not be able to apply it to our market. So, fixing the data is extremely important, and then, getting the tool. The third element that we can talk about is regulation. And here we're seeing, a frenzy from all the different governments trying, to regulate those new technologies, especially in the fintech. They're issuing laws around, the data privacy. We have GDPR, CCPA in the US, to protect your data. And this, if you're an entrepreneur, this is really killing you, because it seems that those laws are made, basically to favor the incumbents, the companies that are already large enough, to afford the cost of licensing with those new regulations. But when you're a startup, you're not, you would not want to license with all those regulations. Having said that, regulation is also good, because otherwise you would have, the GAFAs and the very large companies basically taking its all. So we need to find the right balance between the different, between the regulations. And now I'm going to hand over back, to Mario, who can explain a bit more, how regulation is impacting, especially in the financial worlds and with the blockchain and all these kind of things.
Thanks, Christophe. So, Christophe, as you rightly mentioned, regulations are important, because if I am an investor and I am putting money within an organization, I would like to have transparency within that company, and I would like the company to be somehow regulated if I am putting a sizable amount of money, unless I know the owners personally. So in case of Europe, maybe we are going to be on an extreme by being over-regulated. However, if we all understand the concept behind regulation, and we see what happened in the recent past on, for example, cryptocurrencies, we all know a few years ago there were a number of bubbles being exploding, various crypto exchanges being hacked, and all this occurred because they were not properly structured, they were not properly set up. Their ICT was not properly regulated. Their management maybe was not the ideal management to have so much money from investors being put with them, and then they were not aware what they are going to do with that money. So within Europe, Malta was in fact it was the first one to go and regulate the blockchain industry as well. And when you look at regulations, when you look at the financial world and the blockchain technology, in Europe you are looking at MiFID to regulate the brokerage companies, and that is a very long shot because it covers a lot of parts of the industry. If you are looking at the investment funds, you are looking at the Alternative Investment Fund Directive, and with it there are various variants depending on the country in question. For example, in Luxembourg there is the so-called CIF for the professional investors, which is a light touch of an investment fund regulation. In Malta there is the so-called professional investment fund. The ideal scenario in this case would be that we combine the fiat money and the right as well crypto money, because if we look at the crypto world, and in fact yesterday I was looking at the market cap of Ethereum and Bitcoin, it is 1.5 trillion. So imagine what we can do with 1.5 trillion if we put a small part into the venture capital world. In fact, in the first half of 2021, the value of the investments in Europe was 60 billion. So 60 billion, it is just 4%, only 4% of the crypto money when we consider Bitcoin and Ethereum. What we are seeing as well in Europe is that, not in Europe, in the world, we are seeing that investors want to start, particularly the crypto investors, want to diversify and want to invest into more tangible assets. And in this respect, Christophe and myself, and with HIC Capital and other partners as well, are setting up structures in which, working into a regulated environment, we can attract, first of all, investors who would be willing to put money into regulated investment funds. And at the same time, those regulated investment funds will in their turn invest into projects. And if you have a crypto owner who currently is investing into a very volatile market of Bitcoins, for example, in which today it can be valued $60,000, within 1 month it can be either 30,000 or 90,000, so it is very volatile. Instead of having that volatility, they will be investing into, again, regulated funds, and their investment can be high risk, medium risk, or low risk, depending on risk propensity of the investor in question. So this is the trend. This is what we are seeing in the market, and I believe that this is something which will continue. So for those investors who are properly KYC'd, we say, that is, they have proper due diligence and proof of how they originated the coin, those are the ideal candidates to invest into these type of products, and eventually these type of products will help the industry, particularly the startup, to have the necessary capital, which Christophe was mentioning after the seed capital. So they will typically have the 2 million to start the process, but then afterwards, to grow from 2 million to 10 million to 50 million, there will be the investment funds or the securitization vehicles who will be investing into those projects. And by all means, not all the projects are going to be the unicorn projects. And in fact, one of the problems of the venture capitalists is that they are very selective. First of all, they want to enter into a late stage of the project. And in addition to that, they are selective to only choose 1 or 2 unicorns, and maybe not look at those other projects which are still good, still profitable, but not falling within their risk appetite. When we consider blockchain can be an enhancer to the traditional finance, because let's imagine that you have an investment fund, and an investment fund, it has 100 investors. Nowadays, the so-called transfer agent, that is those who are accepting the applications for the new investors, spend hundreds of hours to do due diligences on investors. With blockchain technology, when we include in the smart contract as well the KYC, with artificial intelligence and linking with different service providers, there can be a material improvement in the efficiency of the onboarding of investors, which will ultimately translate into less cost, which will ultimately translate into more money to invest into the projects. So we are looking at having a streamlined process to onboard clients, having the necessary and a good team within the structure who can easily analyze the right projects as well, and to create the win-win situation between the right projects, the good investors, and backed by a good management team. Looking at the blockchain technology, the main advantages are that let's look at venture capital. Venture capital, usually the projects will be 4 or 5 years. So whoever is going to invest into those type of projects, usually they will have redemption gates, that is, they cannot exit the projects before a number of years. Usually it will be up till the end of the project. And with blockchain technology, we can create the secondary market, and when a token holder will have the token, it can exchange it on the market. It will be like when you have shares of Coca-Cola, you can buy and sell depending on the market price at that time. So we are creating the secondary market, and as I explained, there is the efficiency of the cost as well. So to wrap it up, what we are doing as a team is at the moment we have a company which is a public company which is at the last phases of being regulated, and subsequently there will be the blockchain as well included into this type of structure. Over to you, Nikolai.
Mario, thank you very much. I have a few questions for you, Christophe. And first about tokenized funds. Do you think that VC tokenized funds is the future of VC markets in general, and the trend in fund structuring processes in Europe, or maybe it's a global trend in the world? What do you think? And if is it a chance to reduce risk for venture capitalists structure VC tokenized funds?
Okay, I'm just going to start with a figure. Before China bans the usage of cryptos and bitcoins, the total volume of transactions in China around cryptocurrencies, mainly bitcoins, right? Because it's the leading currency. It was the same in one day in China as the whole world together, right? So this is just to explain that here in Europe, we're just lagging behind the China, right? The Asians. I mean, here we tend to be a bit self-centered on ourselves in Europe and in the US and the UK as well. But in reality, the Asian world has been developing blockchains and using it much more massively than we do. Now, is this going to replace the traditional way VCs are funding themselves? I don't think so. I think that this is going to complement the way VCs are funding themselves, right? A bit like, the radio and the TV. The TV didn't kill the radio, right? It's just that, the two different sources of funding. For some investors, they will prefer to have more control over the VC, so they will invest into VCs. For hands-off investors, it might be easier to invest through tokens and diversify their investments across, multiple VCs or private equities, or even, go and make direct investments into the startups. So it's going to be complementary. It's also complementary in terms of risk perspective, right? So a token holder tends to have a different profile than a typical institutional investor or industrial investor or ultra high net worth investor. They tend to be younger, let's face it, and they tend to be IT savvy, otherwise they wouldn't know how to buy a crypto. And they also need to be risk takers, otherwise they would not have purchased a cryptocurrency in the first place, right? So this is extremely good for startups, right? Because investors in startups need to be risk takers. Otherwise, you just buy a blue chip company on the stock exchange, right? Or a bond, a sovereign bond. So the profile on the cryptocurrency owners is different from the institutional investors. And this is what we're trying to do with our platform. Actually, we're trying to put together the two worlds. So for the first tranches, which are always the most complicated to raise, because the first tranches is where you have the perceived risk is higher, because you don't have references, you don't have a track record, you have not generated enough cash flows yet. So you have potentially a high reward, but you also have a high risk. And this fits, the profile for the token buyer, a buyer of tokens. Now, once the company or the startup or the portfolio of startups is matured and the company is large enough, then we go for the institutional investor that tends to have more money than the cryptocurrency owner, and will also be less greedy in terms of potential upside. Now, they will also be much more risk averse, and therefore, they will only invest into funds which already have a proven track record. In fact, if you look at the latest fundraising in the hedge fund world, you will see that the big leading hedge funds, KKR, Alcentra, Fortress, all those funds actually have they're always, when they look for investors, they always have more investors than the one they can take in, right? Because the world is heavily polarized. I mean, the very large institutional investors, the pension funds, the banks, which are looking for maybe lower returns, but safe investments, they prefer very established funds. So a lot of the money that we're seeing at the moment is geared, towards those very well-established funds. And for the startups and new funds starting, it's going to be easier for us, to start with cryptocurrency owners and issuance of tokens than for those very large funds. Also, there's one thing that we want to acknowledge. It hasn't hit the ground yet, but there's been a lot of quantitative easing in the US and in Europe. So there is a lot of money in the range of trillions that has been released because of a COVID, right? So just for Spain, I think that we're going to receive something like 150 billion of government, of European aids, to help the industry. And this is kind of blurring the borders between existing companies starting new projects and pure startups starting from scratch, because those who are actually attracting those government aids tend to be large companies. And in order for them to invest these companies, what they do internal corporate venturing. So they are the one creating their own startups, but kind of internally and at the same time externally. So they call it corporate venturing. And this is kind of an alternative way of also raising funding when you're a startup, which is basically to team up with an existing company and divert or attract those government fundings to your startups, but through a very large company. So we're expecting to see in the coming year, especially for countries like Spain, Greece, and France, because they were heavily affected by COVID, so they have the highest assignations of subsidies. So these countries are going basically to give away, their money for free, right, for new projects. So this can be extremely interesting.
Christophe, thank you very much for such detailed response. I have the last question for Mario, and this question is how good is the European market as a market, not an investment market, but for the startup presence, for development, and get a good track record for the startups?
Yeah,
do you think? 5 minutes and.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I will not take long.
Thank you.
When you compare Europe with the US, we are lagging behind. So let's put it this way. And Christophe has explained as well the reasons behind it. However, COVID has changed a lot, and countries, at the moment, the European Union has allocated a number of initiatives. For example, a small country like Malta is offering startups. They are offering them offices, soft loans, cash grants. They are helping them through various initiatives to start businesses. And this is being offered to not just the Maltese enterprises, but as well foreigners relocating to Europe. I believe that if you look not just Europe, but as well at internationally, including Russia as well, I started by saying that 66% actually of the projects are being financed by their own people. So if you are German, the tendency is that you invest into projects which are in Germany. If you are French, the same. So I believe that having companies relocate, if a company, for example, a Russian company or a Russian startup or an Asian startup wants to raise finance from Europe, I believe that they need to have a branch, a subsidiary, or set up their own business as well in Europe, because that will help to be closer to the market. Investors prefer to have, if you are a European, an EU investor, you tend to invest into EU startups. There are various reasons behind it. For example, taxation. Taxation can be a good reason to invest into your own country. For example, if a European is investing into an offshore center, when they are repatriating back their profits, there are a number of countries which will impose additional taxes, and nobody wants to pay additional taxes on their investments. So those are the key takeouts from my concluding remarks.
Mario, thank you very much. Christophe, Mario, thank you. I just want to ask Vladislav Kochetkov to start his speech, and Alena Limamedova will help us with right translation. Thank you. Vladislav, микрофон.
Коллеги, добрый день. Я на русском. FINAM – это международная группа, исторически создана в России, сейчас присутствует на рынках Европы, США, Китая, Мексики и ряда других стран. Компания была создана в 1994 году, и начинали мы как фондовый брокер. Это до сих пор наш бизнес. С 2004 года мы стали венчурным инвестором. За это время проинвестировали более 70 компаний в разных странах. Это Россия, Великобритания, США, Франция, Германия, Вьетнам, Таиланд, Китай и ряд других. В текущий момент наш инвестиционный портфель превышает $2 миллиарда. У нас есть неплохой опыт вывода наших инвестиционных проектов в другие страны. Где-то есть хорошие результаты, прежде всего, из больших проектов. Давайте сначала, да? То есть ключевой фокус наших инвестиций – это финтех, дейтинг и эдтех. В данный момент мы постепенно выходим из всех проектов, не связанных с финтехом. Последняя большая сделка – это продажа компании Badu в дейтинге. Соответственно, мы фокусируемся все больше и больше на финтехе. В данном случае я хотел бы больше все-таки рассказать о российском рынке, его специфике и перспективе некого экспорта и импорта стартапа. Начать хотел бы с позитива, напомнив, что в России сложилась одна из более развитых венчурных индустрий в мире. Это не очень популярный тезис, но тем не менее в части финтеха мы общепризнанный мировой лидер. Сейчас практически 75% платежей в стране осуществляется с использованием пластиковых карт или других электронных платежных систем. Один из самых высоких уровней проникновения в мире демонстрируют наши службы такси. Тут мы мировой лидер. Фудтех растет быстрее общемирового уровня. Индустрии компьютерных игр, во многом усилием Mail.ru Group, но тем не менее индустрия компьютерных игр продемонстрировала очень высокую конкурентоспособность в мировом масштабе. Работая на разных рынках, мы понимаем, что российский рынок очень специфичен. Это, скажем так, рынок крупных латифундистов, а не фермеров. Большинство успешных проектов реализуются в рамках крупных технологических компаний, групп, банков и связанных с ними экосистемах. На самом деле компания преимущественно частная. технологические компании, такие как Яндекс или Mail, они с государством не имеют большой связи. Собственно, этот тезис подтверждается тем, что в первом полугодии текущего года российская венчурная индустрия показала рекорд по сделкам. Они превысили $1 миллиард. Это рост в 2 раза к предыдущему максимуму. Но по большому счету половину этой суммы обеспечили всего 2 сделки. На мой взгляд, это объясняется несколькими факторами. Прежде всего, российская венчурная индустрия, она еще очень молодая. И на ней не созданы сети инвесторов, стратегий, и, соответственно, крупные компании предпочитают развивать собственные подразделения, чем искать решения у независимых венчурных фондов. При этом российский рынок, российский венчур, это, как правило, рынок 1 или 2 инвесторов. Ну, если смотреть международный опыт, то у Airbnb перед выходом на IPO список инвесторов насчитывал 57 фондов, у Robinhood 62 фонда. Вот нет российской компании, у которых было бы больше 2-3 инвесторов, как правило. Наконец, есть российский рынок, и несмотря на размеры страны, российский рынок сам по себе невелик. На нем не всегда имеет смысл создавать какие-то нишевые сервисы. Так что многие фаундеры, вот то, что мы наблюдаем, сразу начинают с того, что регистрируют бизнес где-нибудь в Делавере, хотя разработка у них может находиться в России практически целиком. Это не хорошо и не плохо, это специфика российского рынка, который вполне возможно имеет собственный путь развития. То есть его отличает высокий уровень консолидации и корпоративности. Да, у нас немного меньше разнообразия, но мы можем концентрировать усилия и становиться лидерами в отдельных наиболее перспективных сегментах. Это состояние рынка, но, безусловно, проблем в России хватает. Одна из главных проблем российского рынка – это проблема масштабирования. Для растущих компаний практически закрыто долговое финансирование. Это не какая-то специфика российских банков, просто регулирование российского рынка со стороны Центробанка предполагает достаточно большие резервы для компаний, которые не имеют активы в формате недвижимости. С точки зрения российского регулятора, программный код или сервера – это не актив. И при этом, к сожалению, в России пока не сформировался полноценный инновационный лифт. Фондовый рынок осторожно относится к компаниям роста, особенно среднего масштаба. Он больше ориентируется на крупные корпорации с хорошей дивидендной доходностью. Следующая проблема – это несбалансированное развитие отраслей. Как мы уже говорили, российский рынок – это рынок, который может консолидировать свои усилия на нескольких направлениях. И если с интернет-бизнесом у нас все достаточно неплохо, то, например, венчур в промышленности развит слабо, в том числе из-за нехватки квалифицированных кадров, которые имели бы внедренческий опыт. И, безусловно, рынок достаточно молодой, и есть проблемы с регулированием, в частности, налоговым и валютным. Многие вещи, которые являются очевидными для рынков США или Европы, например, запустить бесплатный пилот с крупной корпорацией, в России просто запрещены налоговым законодательством. Впрочем, все эти вопросы постепенно решаются, и российская венчурная индустрия становится все более и более глобальной. Например, это подтверждают сделки, самый известный фонд DST, FINAM тоже проинвестировал большое количество международных компаний. Таким образом...
Vladislav, I think about a few minutes for your speech because of time.
Все, закончил. Хорошо. Кросс-граничный обмен стартапами неизбежен.
Владислав, спасибо большое за выступление. Dear colleagues, let's continue. And I'd like to ask Ameya to tell information about Indian market. Of course, the Asian market is gaining popularity, so it will be interesting to learn the details and features of this market for startups and venture capitalists. Thank you, Ameya.
Thank you so much, Nikolai, spasiba, and spasiba to everyone else as well who are here. And Andrei, thank you for having me, and HIC Capital, and all the best. Namaste, of course, and all the best to all the listeners all around the world. I think we heard some phenomenal inputs from Christophe and from Mario about Spain and Malta, and it was very interesting the views on how instead of investing in VCs, people might start buying tokens. I found that extremely interesting, and I think thank you for your insights. And again, also Mr. Vladislav, thank you for your insights on the Russian market. And I was at SPIEF earlier this year in June. I was at the time speaking on youth entrepreneurship, and on the panel along with a couple of your ministers. And I think what is very interesting for me was that youth in Russia means 40 and below, and youth in India means 35 and below. So luckily it was 2 weeks before my 35th birthday that I was in Russia, because otherwise I would not have been the right person to speak on youth entrepreneurship. But jokes apart, I think we are here today to talk about the Indian startup market, and it's, as you know, it's an extremely I would say a robust market for startups here. I mean, the beauty of India is there's a lot of entrepreneurship, and and what is great is everybody wants to start a company these days. Even the young kids who are coming. I mean, earlier what used to be the case is Indians took a job similar to how it is in Japan. Indians took a job, stayed with one company their entire life. They were very risk averse, and now you find everyone who's willing to jump ship, join a company, join a startup, get some equity, and take a big hit on salary, and even start their own company. So I think you see the appetite for risk and the appetite for startups really going high, and I think that's one very good thing. We are one of the countries with the most number of unicorns in the world. So at the end of last year, we had 38 unicorns in India. Some of them you might know, like Zomato, which had a very successful listing this year, and it's been one of the biggest hits. You might know of a company like Flipkart, which was bought by Walmart. 85% was bought by Walmart for about 18 billion US. There are food startups like Swiggy. There's another startup called Paytm, which is a payment startup, which is doing a massive IPO now. I think it's going to be valued at about 20 billion. But this year in 2021 itself, the number of startups, unicorns, have gone up from 38 to 66. So there are 28 new startups unicorns in India this year, and which I think is the most for anywhere in the world. And again, one of the benefits of India is that we are a democracy. We are a country that respects the rule of law, and and what the tech crackdown which happened in China recently, a lot of the big tech companies being cracked down upon, I think it has made people realize that while China also is a very large market and a very attractive market in terms of numbers, the thing with China is the Chinese market, A, is very government controlled, and B, is also a market which is primarily for the Chinese investors and for the Chinese companies. Whereas India is an open market. Unlike China, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have all the big global tech giants are here, and they're also, of course, competing with our local tech giants and companies which are being created. We spoke a bit about crypto, and the interesting thing is two big crypto companies also are now unicorns in India. A company called CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Crypto Exchange. Both are companies that allow, they're exchanges. They're not currencies, but they allow you to buy crypto. And I think so that's also very interesting. And so we've seen that. And again, you've seen a lot of now development on the food tech side, a lot of interest. So we, for example, just this year, since April, just to showcase the investments we've made on the VC side, we've done a deal in a milk company, A2 milk company called Native Milk, and now we're doing a follow-on round in that company. We've done a merchandising company called McMarise, and if you saw, merchandising has become really big now. And in the US, Jay-Z recently invested in a merchandising company at a value of about 15 billion. So merchandising is going to probably become the next big thing. And interestingly, merchandising, which is connected with actually cryptos. So for example, you can tokenize, they're called fan tokens. So you can actually create tokenization for for fans. So for example, you can create that for argument's sake, an FC Barcelona or a Zenit St. Petersburg or the Russian ice hockey team. So I think what that creates is it really creates a lot of opportunities for clubs and for sports teams to also fund themselves, and especially in markets where, like in India, cricket is huge, as you know, and IPL teams. I mean, today incidentally is the IPL final, which is our local T20 league, which is probably one of the richest sports leagues in the world, and with peers from all over the world. So again, tokenization there is going to be very interesting. We've also done a prop tech company, incidentally, in Europe, in Greece. So that's also doing quite well. We're doing a follow-on round there. We are now in the process of doing the company in a burger chain. So it's similar to Shake Shack, but an Indian. So we're doing a deal in that. And we're also investigating 2 deals in the agriculture space. So the good news is that deal flow is plenty. I think the challenges, of course, are the same as every business. One is people. One has to really be careful of the people you back, because ultimately you're backing people and not, and the company. Number 2 is the sector. I mean, if you have guys who are in sectors which you believe will become redundant in a few years, because redundancies become extremely high lately. And the interesting thing is, I had, we have someone give me some wisdom the other day, is that when you're running a race these days, don't look at the guy who's in front of you, but look at the guy who's just starting running, because that guy is more dangerous than the guy in front of you. Because what it means is that some of the newer startups and companies which are coming up, they innovate so efficiently, and for them, earlier the barriers to entry were a lot higher, and now they've become a lot lower. So I think that's something which is very good. The government also promotes startups in a big way. Government of India under the Ministry of Commerce has something called Invest India, under which they have Startup India. So there's a lot of promotion for startups. Each and every state government, as you know, we're a federal country with 29 states and 5 union territories, and even the states promote startups in a very big way, with each and every state having its own innovation council. A lot of the global big VCs are already present here. They're very active in the market. And it's a market which attracts capital from Europe, from China, from the US, from the Middle East, from Japan, from all over. So even the big sovereigns like Temasek, etc., are very active participants in the Indian startup ecosystem. And I think one area where I would say we are a bit weak is with Russia. So I think that's something which we need to strengthen further. We would also want Russian tech companies to come to India. That's something which I have been saying for a long time. I must admit that when I use Yandex, I find Yandex to be the best super app of its kind in the world. I think going from ordering food to taxis to everything. I mean, I think it's a phenomenal platform, Yandex, and it's a pity that Yandex is not in India. And given the historical relationship between India and Russia, India being a big arms buyer from Russia, India being a big energy buyer from Russia, historical allies, the fact that the new industrial revolution, which is the tech revolution, I mean, if you see historically, the Russians helped build power plants in India, helped build steel mills in India, helped build up our defense production, helped build our dams. So there's so much transfer of technology from Russia to India during the Soviet times. But today, unfortunately, with the new revolution, which is in tech, we are not seeing that much cooperation. So, I mean, I would like to use this platform, and every platform that I am on when I speak with Russia, is please bring Russian tech companies to India. I think it's also a good idea for private sector to create, say, an India-Russia tech fund, which can help fund some of these larger investments into India. And the Indian market is large. We are 1.35 billion people. It's growing. Our average growth rate this year will be about 11%. And I think we'll stabilize around 8.5-9% next year, as predicted by the IMF. So it's a growing market, growth rates which are unlikely to be seen anywhere else. It's a market with a growing middle class. So currently our per capita income is about $2,100, but I think this per capita income will literally double in the next 10 years. Or, so you'll see our incomes also growing, which will mean more consumption, which will again mean greater opportunities for Russian tech. Also, I think Russian companies, and I think that the other element which we really need to look at with India is the fact that we are a young nation. Our average age is about 24, I think, and so the youth are people who are keen to, they are consuming. The trends are changing, and they're increasingly consuming through technology. It's not the traditional model which existed. So I think that also makes India a very attractive market. So I think the startup sector here is booming. It's a sector that attracts, as I've said, a lot of capital, a lot of talent. Probably some of the best talent in the world is attracted here, and in the country is coming towards the startup sector. And I think that going forward, I think this will only get better. I don't see any major hurdles for the sector. Of course, there are always some hurdle or the other which comes up in terms of taxation or in terms of government regulation, because I think the economy is moving a lot faster than the regulatory framework is moving. And us as industry associations, I chair the Indian Chamber of Commerce in the Western region. I am also the chairman of startups for the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber. So all these, through these entities, we keep engaging with the government to continuously evolve the process and make regulations easier. So I think that's something which we certainly work on. So I think that's my 2 cents. And if there are any questions or anything that I can address, I'm happy to discuss that.
Ameya, thank you very much. You have talked about unicorns from India, and of course, in my opinion, it can be a great point and advantage why startups from Russia and other parts of the world should choose Asian market for global expansion, and exactly Indian. And my question is, what exactly can Russian startups do with Indian partners and in Indian market? We are talking about not majors of our industries like big taxi aggregators and big companies which are like unicorns. We talk about smaller companies, for example, seed, rounds startups. What do you think?
Sure, I think it's a very good question, Nikolai. I think first and foremost, what is important is Russian companies are welcome in India. So unlike some of the Western markets which have a degree of apprehension when they have Russian companies coming in, here in India, Russian companies are welcome here. Not only welcome, they are loved here. I think so. Culturally, there is a very strong affinity, and I think what is important is that we need, and that's very important. You have to realize that some of these softer aspects are things which we don't consider. We look at market size, we look at cash flow, we look at everything else, but we don't consider the softer aspects which can go wrong. And when they go wrong, when the things can be really problematic, because nobody can regulatory action can be quite strong. So I think the first and foremost, Russian companies are welcome here. Secondly, I think the market size here is quite large, so we need to appreciate the fact that we are partnering with India will ensure that some of the smaller companies will have a good size of market. Number 3 is, if you are in the early stage, I think the only problem which I see is two-tone. One is, the Indian market needs a lot of understanding. It's a unique market, and within India we have many markets. So if a company believes they can come here and do everything on their own, I think that is problematic. I think they need to have local teams, local partners, and they certainly need to have on-ground presence. Number 1. Number 2, we are a very cost-sensitive market. So one has to also understand that whatever products that might be there, be it in the agri space, be it in the defense space, be it in any other sector, I think one must look at how one can reduce the cost of delivery, because India is a very cost-sensitive market. And number 3 is you need money. I'll be honest with you, it's a market which you can burn a lot of cash, and you need to be well funded in order to compete in India. But that said, there's a lot of capital available here as well. So I think if a company creates the right team, right product, you can even raise domestic capital in India for the Indian market. And that's why I think which is what I also spoke with Andrei, is that we need to create some sort of an India-Russia fund which can fund some of these companies to come to India.
Ameya, maybe more detailed instructions for what we to do. The first point is to create an Indo-Russian fund. Yes.
Not the first point, that could be a complementary point, but I think, I think I would suggest that each company is unique. So firstly, I would say that you will need a local presence. So operating out of Russia in India is very difficult. They'll need to either create an Indian subsidiary or they'll need to create an on-ground presence, maybe even find a local partner who can take some equity in the company and hire a very strong local team. Number one. That's why I said all of this needs money. So if they're going to bootstrap it and think that, so this will need money. So either they have to raise that money locally, or that's why I suggested the creation of an India-Russia fund, which can finance this growth opportunities in India, for the Russian companies. Number three is the fact that their business model also needs to evolve slightly, wherein they need to consider the fact that we need to ensure, because India is a very cost-sensitive market. So what I've noticed with some of the Russian companies is that their price points are very high. So they will have to figure out ways of reducing the price points for the Indian market for actually being able to gain traction here. Because, for example, say we saw a couple of agri startups from Russia, which were great technologies, but it will never find adoption here because very few people can afford that price point. But for example, Skolkovo has a company which does work on. We spoke to them a couple of times, but they have a company which it does some work on the video streaming. In terms of what they're doing, and they're already working with a couple of very large Indian tech players, and they're doing extremely well. They have a fantastic product which was wanted by they basically help reduce the amount of data that is required to stream video, so I think they reduce the packets or something. So that's doing extremely well, and I think that's something which is a success story, if you ask me. I met another company which is in the pharma sector, and they're doing it's a Russian company, and they're doing stuff on injections and syringes, and again they are doing quite well, and they are now opening up a factory in Hyderabad in India to manufacture here, and so that they can reduce the cost. So I think these are successful examples, but they're all well funded. So my concern is, if someone is in the early stage, if it's in the seed stage or Series A stage, do they have the money to be able to expand into India? Because as I said, it's a market that needs capital, that sucks in capital. Because of the sheer demand for startups and the amount of capital that's present here, talent is not cheap. People think talent is cheap. It is not. Talent is very expensive in India, and you need to fund that. Talent might you can get cheaper people, but that will not suffice, right? You need to get good quality talent, and talent is not cheap. Talent, because a lot of dollars are chasing this talent. So we need to also do that. And of course, India is a very complex regulatory framework. So to understand the regulatory framework, I think it's important to have a strong local partner and a strong team.
Ameya, thank you. I hope that Andrei Misiura can join our discussion. I remember that Andrei is a managing partner of HIC Capital Group and head of Chamber of Commerce and Industry MSME CCI of India. And Andrew, take a micro.
Good evening, friends. So I'm heading the Eurasian office, one of the 5 countries of MSME CCI. So, but here I'm present as the HIC Capital Group Managing Partner International. Thanks everyone for joining in. I feel very sorry for Vladislav not having enough of time to unveil this concept, how international startup exchange should work like. So this is definitely one of the most growing points over there. I'm very pleased by the remarks by Ameya, by the way, that creating special funds, for instance, in the Russian fund, or it can be a Russian Singaporean fund, or it can be like Eurasia European Union kind of structure, that can be a great vehicle to move the story ahead. But here I'm in a way in a little bit of integrator's role. And let me start from reframing the concept of Christophe and Mario. So we speak about the vision of future, basically, yeah, and the things how they are working right now. And Christophe used the word fragmentation, yeah. I will put it a little bit differently, because the issues are pretty same in Russia, but in a little bit different manner. Mindset-wise and systematic structure is also a little bit different. And this mismatch of the systems is also an issue. And Vladislav unveiled this as like it's not a bit, it's a feature in a way, the way it works like. So here it is more about gap. Let me put it this way, yeah? It is about gap. Basically, gap in the innovation and in the project work. So what Skolkovo ecosystem has done pretty well, that like product thinking was enrooted during this year. During these years of their active work in Russia. So, but we have to unveil that there is a certain mismatch between technology and between the product, between the investment market and market. It's not the same thing, once again. Sometimes you need to take the money somewhere else to go to some other market, and that's totally fine. And that's how Russian investment market looks like right now. We speak about investors of Russian origin. So we don't speak about Russian companies per se, and it's not a big deal. This is the way it works like. So formally speaking, we have no unicorns. And by the way, good news for Ameya, we have a recent report by High School of Economics, where it was mentioned that by the formal factor, we can enlist 44 unicorns in India already. So it's like unicorns and unicorn club all together. So India is really, really growing. So Europe is a very promising market from the point where you feel like protected. You feel protected, but it's moving really slow. And Europe is dragging behind Asia. So the way Russia is dragging behind institutionally, but not by the understanding. So in Russian investment market is pretty active. And what we have to underline, that if we speak about Russian investment market, we need to speak about the most globalized market in the world. So connection to the valley, Silicon Valley. So and the understanding how people are moving. It's basically not about the jurisdiction. It's about the country. It's about the nation. It's mostly about Russian-speaking community. So we can speak about the capacity of Russian-speaking community, and that capacity is extremely impressive. But technologically speaking, there is a certain mismatch how technologies are being monetized, or to be precise, under-monetized. And we have checked a set of beautiful technologies in the regional technoparks, for instance, in Perm, in Novosibirsk, and over there, there is a certain lack of monetization over there. So the concept of VC tokenized can bring a lot, not to the startups only. It can bring a lot to the monetization of technologies. So a lot of beautiful technologies are dying before they are packed into the product. This is the thing. And packing the things into the product is mostly about the market fit understanding. And Ameya was absolutely right when he mentioned that, see, you need the presence of the team locally, you need strong people who will understand what to do for the market. So basically, this is the matter of adjusting the product. And this is what we do in HIC. So we select projects with good market fit, and we propose them to go into a little bit different direction for the different market, and that will increase the capitalization drastically. So, but here, when we speak about the availability of the money, so I see one more common point in our ecosystems if we compare Russian, or let's put it like Eurasian ecosystem and European ecosystem. So we basically in India this issue is also there, but it's orchestrated a little bit differently. Yeah. So we can see that people are hunting for low-hanging fruits. So in Russia, people are hunting for low-hanging fruits when they speak about investment opportunities. So, but basically what every single investor is looking for is market-hungry team. Again, we speak about the gaps. Here comes the gap, because guessing what investor will take when the investor is ready to cash out and guessing what the market needs, it's sometimes a little bit different thinking. And if we speak about Russian unicorns, the only like Russian incorporated unicorn, Wildberries, for instance, this company was growing organically, so like without investment at all. So this is the market hungry company, and this is a perfect fit for any investor. But again, market hungry people are not only about the venture industry. VC industry is mostly about the vision, so the way the future will look like. And what we are lacking of, I think, we're lacking of visionaries from the ground level. So we have wonderful selection process from the point of like product ecosystems. We have wonderful innovation systems, which are a little bit different from products. But right now it seems that the government is taking the lead over there. So it was decided that the Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution will be created. It was articulated that it will be focus areas, that it will be separate governmental program. For instance, if we speak about AI, if we speak about artificial intelligence projects, I think it is like highly underestimated and under-evaluated how good they are in Russia. Because in scientific ratings, in top lists, Russia is not the topper, unfortunately. But why? Because people are sometimes going into the project first, and here we have like direct implementation pipeline. For instance, we have a beautiful medtech with very precise results based purely on artificial intelligence. But what they have done, it was done domestically. So they have the outreach to the database of patients, and they have direct outreach to the people and to the data set that they can test, basically. And there is lack of that, like good packing kind of story. So in India, mostly I can say that low-hanging fruits feeling is about impatience. So Indian market sometimes is very much impatient, like from the grassroots level, but this market requires patience, very much. And when you try to enter the market, you need to understand that once you are rooted there, you will never leave it, most likely, because you will understand how like nourishing this market is. And I have to stress out that Russian investors are already digging into that, and that's good news, basically. I think I can unveil something that we haven't shared publicly so far. We have issued a small report about the Russian VC industry results and how it can grow in India, basically. And we have found out one interesting trend. I think you can see that. We identified Indian boom. So of the Russian, once again, we speak about Russian money. Russian money is about not only Russian funds, but funds run by Russians, Russian-speaking funds. We can say so, and of course, it is mostly like syndicated deals. But this is a new story. So if we speak about the good shape of Russian market, we speak that within first half of 2021, the investment volume exceeded 1 billion. Once again, during the same time, 1.5 billion roughly was invested to India with Russian touch. And we can even show like numbers how fast this mushrooming trend, yes, is growing. So you can see that in 2020 there are very few deals like that. Only 2 deals in 2019, and 2018 is basically the year of visionaries like Yuri Milner and DST Global, and basically Udan's deal was the runner. But right now we have a lot of syndicated deals for that beautiful market, and right now if we speak about it, is roughly like 16 billion something. The volume is the volume of the Indian investment market right now is like that, and we can say that roughly 8% of that market is about Russian money, this or that way. Yeah. So for the mature stage, the cash flow is available, but for the early stage, it's not. And people are not market hungry enough, unfortunately. But from the other hand, we have a beautiful set of technologies, under monetized. We have very beautiful team of founders who can pack them into nice projects, but mostly they are sitting in a little bit different area of ecosystems, we can put it this way. Yeah, and we have nearby a blockchain revolution, which is mostly about Russian founders as well. But here I think that misunderstanding of blockchain revolution is the main problem, because we spoke about VC tokenized. This is a beautiful concept, but when we speak about crypto, it is a very much speculative topic, and people think about blockchain when they speak about crypto. No, crypto is much deeper. So, and blockchain itself is a much more promising area. So for anything, if it can be tokenized, it should be tokenized. It can be decentralized, it should be decentralized. Basically, this is the concept. And here we have a certain promise of the market that maybe these points of Russian touch can finally come together, like hunt for the new markets in Asia, like hunt for the new technologies, and mostly we speak about the companies who are not incorporated in the United States, though using American money. Valley money is there. So, but mostly if we speak about blockchain, sometimes it's like Estonian incorporated company, Malta incorporated company, so something blockchain friendly. And maybe we can put that together into one point, and maybe we can bring a lot of change into that. So if we speak about what industry is missing, let me put it like, of course, good regulation. Of course, good regulation, but that's not the main thing, because as Vladislav mentioned, so it's just a feature. So Russians work everywhere, and they work as a network, and this is a beautiful thing. Why we need to ruin that? Of course, we need to tap into the high-tech kind of thing, which is a little bit more like about the government, and less about the private players. Private players are mostly highly speculative, but it's very kind of healthy from the side of the market feeling. So, second thing, visionaries. I see very few people who are ready to promote the way they see the future. I see a lot of people trying to guess what the future will be.
And good timing.
Yeah, and third
Speed.
thing,
Yeah.
okay, and third thing, I think that a little bit of flexibility in global thinking, not in the universal model, but with the understanding how different we are, how much of local uniqueness for every single market is required to be understood. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you very much. I have a question and suggestion to discuss with you and our colleagues from Europe and Asia. The thesis that there is a trend to give a lot of attention to the Silicon Valley and not to watch to the Asian market, and that it's a big mistake of modern startups to desire the American market and not desire to get to the Indian market. Andrew, maybe you can start this discussion.
Okay, let me put like non-American markets. So American market, there is, again, it's about the gap in understanding. We need to bridge that gap, that yes, frankly speaking, nothing is better than the American investment market. So it's like clear that this is a medical fact. We cannot test it better than it is. But when we speak about the investment market, first of all, you should look for your investor. If you go personal, you need to rely on the tools that should be behind your back. Basically, if you can take the money from the market, be ready to take the money from the market. So it means that most likely, I'm very hopeful that people will be looking for non-US market, even keeping in mind the capacity of the US market and value money, but they can look more precisely, like they can start looking for the new markets, for Asian market, which is growing, for European market, which is very, very unique and which is very promising in that point of view, that some product adjustment done in Europe can be very upscalable. So, and we believe that this understanding that like investment market and new markets for the product, the difference of that will be much more easier distinguishable by the projects. And we are ready to drive that wave. We are ready to dig into the specifics of this model. Unfortunately, we will be more global in a local way. Yeah, once again. So the fragmentation will keep happening, unfortunately. But global teaming is the key. So we can have our guy in Moscow, we can have our guy in Dublin, we can have our guy in Mauritius, and it can work all together. So this is the main thing, and I think the understanding of that will drive the new market wave.
Mario, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely what Andrei is mentioning is the truth. Looking at the European market is picking up. So there are trends. The trend is that we need to invest more into startups. It is happening, and as I mentioned previously, during the first 6 months of this year, it already surpassed last year as a total. COVID helped us as well on this one, because most of the people were working from the home. A lot of technologies were developed as well during that time. We realized how much is important to utilize technology for to work from home, to study from home, to do banking from home. So, and this helped a lot as well the startups. And I believe that in the coming months, in the coming years, Europe will continue pushing into this direction. European funds are already there. at the disposal of the businesses who wants to come to Europe to invest. And the trend is going to continue positively, I believe.
Okay, Christophe, what's your point of view about trends? And
Yes, so I'm not going to repeat what Andrei and Mario just said because I'm in agreement. I just want to highlight a difference in the mindset, right? When you're in the US and you're an entrepreneur, what you want to become, you want to become a unicorn, right? When you're in Spain or in France or even in Germany and you're an entrepreneur, what you want is you want to become mass affluent, not even wealthy, right? Which means that, you know, entrepreneurs that can sell their companies for a few millions euros actually would prefer to sell it now rather than take the risk of trying to grow it and make it $1 billion company, right? So it all depends, you know, on who the entrepreneur is, right? For the entrepreneur who wants to grow the business, it definitely needs to go to the US. If what they want to do is sell the business and live the rest of their life, you know, happily without having to worry about, you know, food, then they can stay in Europe.
okay, thank you very much. I suggest to finish our interesting discussion about startups, and I hope that we will make more detailed discussions about regions. For example, make a discussion about how to bring startups to the Europe market, how to fund it, and what is the ways of development for startups in these markets, and of course the same for Asia, for Africa, and different regions of the world. Thank you very much for your speech. Thank you very much for your expertise, and of course for the time you give to us today. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, friends.
Bye.
Have a great evening.
Good evening to all.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.